Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
Yeah, once again, a truth-starved nation tunes to the EIB network to figure out what's what. You're in the right place. Happy to oblige. Greetings, my friends, and welcome. It is the one and only Rush Limbaugh program here on the Excellence in Broadcasting Network, a network named after the scope of my talent. A telephone number if you want to be on the program, 800-282-2882. And if you want to send an email address, or the address is lrushbo@eibnet.us. Okay, what's happening here, folks, is pretty much what always happens and what has been happening in the drive-by media since election night. There is an attempt to misinform the public, the part of the public that gets its news from the drive-by media. And sadly, that's still a sizable portion of the public. Be it CBS, be it CNN, be it ABC, be it the New York Times, the Washington Post, USA Today, Yahoo News, the AP, it doesn't matter. Whatever portion of our population watches or reads or listens to news from that cabal is now under the impression that step one in nailing Trump, colluding with Russia, has happened, because this is the way it's being reported. Except that is not what has happened, and I'm relatively confident that those of you who regularly listen to this program know that without my having to remind you. You are up to speed, you're informed, and you're educated on the ways and means of the drive-by media and what their objective here is. You know full well that the objective of what we now affectionately call the swamp, Washington, D.C., and its members in the establishment, their objective is to get rid of Donald Trump, one way or the other. Their objective is to overturn the election of 2016, one way or another. So, what has happened to facilitate that? Well, you are supposed to be focused. The drive-bys are trying to focus you, and as many people as they can, on the indictment and arrest of Paul Manafort. I, however, am not going to be led by the nose by Robert Mueller and his news media cronies. Now, Mueller and his cronies illegally leaked, and this is from Trey Gowdy, not me, illegally leaked that someone was going to be arrested back on Friday. Remember the that began when the leak, and it was leaked to CNN. And we now know unequivocally that CNN has close ties to Fusion GPS. People that have worked at Fusion GPS have worked at CNN. People that have worked at CNN have been places prior to that where they hired people at Fusion GPS. It's incestual, and it is a revolving door for ranking members of the establishment inside Washington, D.C. So the leak was illegal. The purpose of the leak was multifaceted. The first purpose of the leak was to distract you from the growing awareness that it was the Clinton campaign that hired and practically wrote the Trump dossier. By the way, today added information on why they went the dossier route. I've been making a big deal out of the fact that it's the dossier. The dossier. One of the reasons for this, and one of the reasons that the Fusion GPS people were hired, and one of the reasons they hired Christopher Steele, who is Steele, former MI6. What's that? Reputed intelligence agency, the equivalent of our CIA in the UK. They had learned, the Democrats and the media had learned, that standard dirty tricks did not work on Trump, such as the Access Hollywood video. The things that have always worked from the media and the Democrat Party playbook to take out Republican candidates or Republican elected officials had not worked on Trump. They'd fired every weapon they had. They'd used as much ammo as they could muster to get rid of Trump in the traditional Democrat drive-by media dirty tricks technique. But none of it stuck. None of it worked. They could not dent Trump's bond with his voters. And there were enough of them, of course, to elect him president. So they decided that they had to go outside the appearance of politics as usual. And what better way than to purchase and construct and write an intelligence document that was sourced by people in the Russian government and MI6. In other words, this was a way to give a standard, ordinary Democrat dirty trick a little gravitas. Something that appeared to be other than a dirty trick, even though that's all it has ever been. Now, you've heard that the Washington Free Beacon and Paul Singer were the first to hire Fusion GPS. This is true, and I will explain this in due course. But that doesn't mitigate in any way the involvement of Hillary Clinton, the Democrat National Committee, and Mark Elias, the law firm of Perkins Coie. It doesn't mitigate or erase their involvement in any way. So the reason for constructing this dossier and calling it even a dossier was to make it appear outside the normal day-to-day Democrat or Republican dirty tricks. You know, the voting public is used to these things, the October surprise. Everybody's expecting one every election, and dirty tricks is something that people are used to, and none of that had worked on Trump. So this was designed to appear to be something totally independent that was the result of serious intelligence agency investigation and so forth and so on. Well, when the news leaked that Mrs. Clinton and her campaign and a law firm had actually hired Fusion GPS and had actually pretty much written the Trump dossier, and when it had leaked out that Christopher Steele, who was hired by Fusion GPS to actually get this dossier done, when it was learned that the FBI and James Comey had tried to hire Steele to keep him going, it was time to plug that hole in the dike. Ergo, the leak on Friday that Mueller had an indictment. That totally changed the narrative. It changed the direction, and its purpose was to basically cover up and shift away to the side the Clinton involvement in the Trump dossier. It was a classic case of distraction. But none of the Manafort news is really news, ladies and gentlemen, and none of it, I can tell you for ontological certainty, with ontological certitude, none of the Manafort indictment, as we sit here today, has a single thing to do with Donald Trump, with the Trump campaign, or Russian collusion. But this is not news either. I warned you in an audio, in a monologue way back on August 4th that this kind of thing was coming. And the reason I got an email question today, remind me again, Rush, what is Mueller investigating? It was a rhetorical question. The answer is anything. Department of Justice regulations require that when the Attorney General, in this case the Deputy Attorney General, assign a case to a special counsel, there is a crime. There must be a crime requiring investigation. In this case, there was no crime elucidated. There was no crime mentioned. The impanelment of Robert Mueller is wide open. There are no limits on the amount of people he can hire, on the number of people, no limits on the amount of money he can spend, and there's no limit on the time frame. I forget exactly what it was, but it was months ago when even before the early pre-dawn raid of Manafort's home in Virginia, we learned that Mueller was looking 10 years ago, 5, 10, 15 years ago, into financial transactions, business transactions, of people related to Trump. And that told me that what they were going to do, I mean, the purpose of this ultimately is to find something with which to take to court to impeach the president. And if they have to go back to Trump's 92 tax return, remember where he took a $960 million deduction. If they can go back, if they can make some kind of case that there's been financial oddities at some point in Trump's life, they will do it because there is no evidence. The thing you have to remember, that as we sit here today, there still is no evidence whatsoever, and there will not be any evidence of Trump colluding with Russia to affect the outcome of the 2016 presidential election. So Mueller is looking at other things. And the things that he has indicted Manafort on have literally nothing to do with anything to do with Trump or the election in 2016 or the collusion with Russia. In fact, the things that Manafort's been indicted for, I'm told everybody knew that he was doing. It's a long known secret. And that he's not the only one, that the Podesta brothers are doing exactly this kind of thing every day, every week in Washington, that this is the way it operates. Peter King was on, the congressman from New York, was on Fox earlier today. He was resolute in saying that there is zilch, zero, nada evidence anywhere that there was any collusion with Russia by the Trump campaign. We still don't have any of that evidence. I mean, it's not there. And this indictment of Manafort doesn't produce any. Nothing. Folks, nothing has been shown to any congressional committee yet. House or Senate. Nothing. There's not a shred of evidence that's been produced in hours, days, months of investigation by these two committees. There's more than two. There's the committees in the House and the Senate. Peter King has sat through many of these witnesses and said today on Fox that he's seen no evidence whatsoever of any collusion, and nothing in these indictments has anything to do with Trump. But that's not the point. The point is that the media is saying it's the first step. It's this, it's that. It's the first step that Mueller's taking on the way to indicting Trump. And that's all they've got to say, because the audience watching them, reading them, listening to them is going to hear that. And they're probably going to believe it. You won't, because you are sufficiently informed and educated as to the ways of the drive-by media. Nothing in these indictments has anything to do with Trump. But I don't even want to get caught up wasting any time in that other than to point it out. I don't want to get tricked into being led down some primrose path to nowhere by Mueller and his team and his media accomplices. This was leaked to CNN on Friday to distract the effervescing news about the Clinton involvement in all of this. The years of the charges in the indictment of Manafort are 2006 to 2015. 2006 to 2015. We're talking 10 years here before Manafort had anything to do with the Trump campaign. None of what is in the indictment has any direct connection to Trump. It is thought by experienced legal beagles, federal prosecutors, former federal prosecutors, even Alan Dershowitz, whom you will hear in a soundbite coming up, that this is leverage. It's a leverage deal to get Manafort to give them something nasty on Trump. You make life miserable for your perp, and you pile on. And the misery gets multiplied, and you don't let up on the gas. The objective is to make life so miserable for so long, to drag on for years, that Manafort will say anything, even lie if he has to get out from under this. But if it's something Mueller wants to hear, or one of his investigators wants to hear, that they can make PR points out of, then they will take it. Manafort did not see this indictment coming today, as late as Saturday. According to James Rosen at Fox, Manafort had no idea. I don't know if he'd been told he was in the clear. Probably not that. But point is, it came as a surprise even to Manafort. So the indictment charges predate the Trump campaign. The Trump campaign's never mentioned in the indictment. Remember, what is Mueller doing? What do most people think Mueller's doing? Most people think Mueller is investigating Trump-Russia collusion. He was hired when Jeff Sessions had to recuse himself. We now know which was totally unnecessary because none of this is real. The basis and the foundation for this, the Trump dossier, isn't real. Well, I mean, it's real, but it's manufactured. It's fiction. It's made up. Republicans are still trying to track down just how widely used was the dossier in securing FISA warrants. Just how foundational was it in pursuing this congressional and intelligence agency investigation of Trump? My instinct, my intelligence, guided by experience, tells me that it's the foundation, the base. There have been enough of these people that have leaked or misspoken enough to convince me that this is part and parcel, a foundational aspect of their investigation, because that's what it was created for. It was created to form the basis. It was created to suffice as a dirty trick that appeared to be outside the normal boundaries of political dirty tricks that the American voters have simply come to expect, if not tolerate. This was supposed to have the big red word official stamped on it, not political. That's why dossier, that's why Russian government, that's why fusion GPS, that's why all of this has the appearance of being outside the ebb and flow of daily politics, when in fact it is maybe the worst, most egregious example of it. Looks to be a tax evasion issue, not a collusion with Russia issue, as far as the Manafort stuff is involved. Trump's doubling down on tweets this morning that there is no collusion and that the real crimes were committed by Hillary. By the way, folks, there's other news out there that we're going to get to during the course of the program. NFL ratings continue to slide. The World Series drowned the NFL Sunday night game last night. We also, Kevin Spacey was named over the weekend by an actor by the name of Rapp. He's in the new Star Trek Discovery show that's streaming only on the CBS app. And Spacey, I'm not sure I remember that, but if I did it, I'm so sorry. And then came out and announced he's gay. And entertainment drive-by media not letting Spacey skate by on this. They say, hey, Kevin, you can't cover up the fact that you tried to molest a child by simply saying you're gay. No, they can't let him get away with that. Forgive me, I'm gay. The offense is not that great. That's what he was trying to do. Yeah, I might have, but I don't remember it. I could have. If I did, I'm sorry. By the way, I'm gay. I'm living my life as a gay man. And they're saying, you can't do that. We're going to let you get away. Normally coming out as gay would be right on. But now he's coming out as gay after admitting to molesting. That won't work. Not in the current Hollywood Weinstein climate. We have that. It's interesting that Hollywood, what are thought to be big releases of people like George Clooney and Matt Damon, they're tanking, folks. Hollywood blockbusters other than horror movies. I don't know why, but they're tanking. I mean, tanking big time. In addition, the Reverend Jackson wants a sit-down with Bob McNair, the owner of the Houston Texans. Did you know that the phrase, we can't let the inmates run the asylum, or as McNair said in the prison, did you know that was racist? Well, it is now. Apparently, it's very, very racist, and the Reverend Jackson wants to sit down with Bob McNair, and there's scuttlebutt that the NFL better get rid of Bob McNair, the owner of the Texans, the way the NBA got rid of Donald Sterling, who owned the Clippers. So, and the NFL protests over, I think 80% of the Texans took a knee yesterday at their game in Seattle. So look, we're not going to get distracted by this predictable news about Manafort. Everybody knew this was coming. Any big deal? Back in just a second. Welcome back, my friends. El Rushbo, having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have, doing what I was born to do. So a few more tidbits here on the Trump dossier. The Democrats are beginning to indicate now that, beginning to acknowledge that it was paid for by Hillary and the DNC, and they had a cutout law firm to make the transaction Perkins Coie. Pencil neck, Adam Schiff, the ranking Democrat of the House Intelligence Committee, was on one of the Sunday shows yesterday. He said, well, really, it doesn't matter who paid for it. When you get right down to it, who paid for it doesn't matter. What matters is how much of it is true. It doesn't matter who paid for it, but what matters is how much of it is true. Do you think who paid for it might be a factor in how much of it is true? Pencil neck. For example, if Hillary Clinton, the Democrat National Committee, paid for this, and a Democrat law firm who has as a member a guy by the name of Bob Bauer, who has been in bed with the Clinton administration, the Obama administration, do you think if they paid for it, they might have something to say about what it says, pencil neck? So who paid for it? I think they're they're trying to cover up, explain away. Rather than deny the Clintons paid for this, rather than deny the DNC paid for it, they're now trying to say, well, it doesn't matter who paid for it. What matters is if it's true. And that is a technique to keep it alive as a relevant intelligence document while it is in the middle of being totally debunked as not an intelligence document, but a cheap attempt at, well, not cheap. It cost them $9 million. But I mean, it's a pretty flagrant attempt here at replicating opposition research. Now, there's a guilty plea that was announced today too. George Papadopoulos, who was a foreign policy advisor to Trump for a couple of minutes, for a cup of coffee. He's been arrested in a process crime. He's been arrested for making false statements to FBI agents. He was arrested back on October 5th. He was arrested 25 days ago. We're only finding out about that today. So the news of his arrest was withheld in order to bundle it with the indictments, the indictment of Manafort, in order to give it more weight. Now, a lot of people were stunned and shocked over the weekend to learn that Fusion GPS had been hired by a publication many have thought to be conservative, the Washington Free Beacon. Everybody up till that point assumed that Fusion GPS was working exclusively for the Democrat National Committee and the Clinton campaign. But during this past year and a half, there have been allusions to the fact that a huge Republican, never Trumper, was out there actively engaged in trying to destroy the Trump campaign from the moment the campaign began, the Republican primaries. And the name of this person was never known. It was withheld. And this led to many people making guesses as to who it was. And you know who the popular pick was before we learned this over the weekend? Jeb Bush. I have learned that I took my own little survey of people. Who do you think this Republican is? Trump says he knows who it is or thinks he knows. And 75% of people I asked, it had to be Jeb. Jeb's the only guy who had the money to hire him like this. It wouldn't have been Cruz. It wouldn't have been Rubio. It wouldn't have been Kasich, because Kasich doesn't do stuff like this. And it wouldn't have been Christie. So everybody concluded it was Jeb Bush, but it wasn't. It turned out to be a man by the name of Paul Singer. Does the name ring a bell at all? Why does it ring a bell, Mr. Snerdley? Google Paul Singer and climate change and see what you get. I don't know what you're going to get. Google it and see what you get. Paul Singer, it turns out, is one of the primary investors of the Washington Free Beacon. And there are some who think that Bill Kristol might have been involved in this, because Kristol was out openly hostile to Trump and was actually nominating people who ought to run for the Republican nomination, because Kristol wasn't happy with any of them, especially after Trump began to lap the field. But here's the thing about the Washington Free Beacon. They ceased operations with Fusion GPS after Trump got the nomination. Whatever the Washington Free Beacon was doing with Fusion GPS, it ended the moment Trump got the nomination. And they figured they had failed. Whatever they had done, however much money they had spent to try to prevent Trump from getting a nomination, was a gigantic failure. The Washington Free Beacon is saying they paid Fusion to do research on at least two of the front-running Republican candidates. And the claim that all the material Fusion gave them came from open media sources, meaning standard everyday news reports, that Fusion GPS really didn't dig up any dirt that nobody else knew. Now, there's even more news about who funded Fusion. According to reports, Obama's former campaign, Organizing for America, which was that's Obama's campaign Alinsky group, after he was elected, became Organizing for America. He kept his community organizing group active as president. It was called Organizing for America. And that group, Obama's group, gave Mark Elias's law firm, Perkins Coie, almost $1 million. And guess when they started sending that money? It was April of 2016. Fusion GPS and the Washington Free Beacon have broken off relations at this point. So starting in April of 2016, it's strictly the Hillary Clinton campaign, the DNC, and now Obama's outfit, Organizing for America, paying Fusion GPS. The Clinton campaign paid $9 million, which makes it incredible that all these people in the campaign at the DNC say, I don't know, I didn't know. I had a $9 million expenditure and nobody knows? Strains credulity. So the DNC and Hillary and whoever else paying Fusion $9 million. Obama's Organizing for America gave the law firm $1 million. This is exactly when the Democrats took over funding Fusion GPS through Perkins Coie. They were the cutout law firm that the money was funneled through to try to create attorney-client privilege so that nobody could ever untangle this. That's when they hired Christopher Steele to start making up the Trump dossier. Now, everybody's pronounced it Perkins Coie. It's C-O-I-E. I've not heard it. I don't, again, listen to television. I read closed captioning, so I've not heard anybody say if it's Perkins Coie, fine. It sounds squirrely as Coie rather than Coy. Either way works for me, but if they're saying Coie, it's Coie. Now, look at everybody who knew Fusion GPS. Look at all of the inside the Beltway players that were paying Fusion GPS, that knew of Fusion GPS, that was using Fusion GPS. Fusion GPS is at the center of much of this effort to discredit, disqualify, and criminalize Donald Trump and his so-called collusion, of which there's no evidence yet, in the 2016 presidential election. Now, why are we even here? We only know about who funded Fusion GPS because Devin Nunes, who is the Republican chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, had the guts to sign a subpoena for Fusion's bank records. Only one Republican had the guts to go where the answers were, and that was the bank records of Fusion GPS. And that opened the floodgates, everybody trying to get out in front of the story. When that happened, when the judge finally told Fusion they were going to come clean, that's when all of these leaks began. And that's when the rats began scurrying, and that's when everybody tried to get the story out in their own way so that they would not be negatively impacted by it, or at least not really badly. But the Hillary campaign and the DNC and the Obama people almost got away with this, folks. If it hadn't been for Devin Nunes, none of what we know today would be known. We wouldn't know that Hillary Clinton and the DNC had hired GPS. We wouldn't know about the law firm Perkins Coie and their cutout behavior to provide attorney-client privilege so nobody could unravel this. We wouldn't know. All we would know today is that Manafort had been indicted, and man, is it looking bad, because as you'll hear from every expert, this is just the first step. Of course they're not going to indict the president first way. They got to get somebody to flip on him, and that's how they're presenting this. We wouldn't know any of what we know to counterbalance any of this. We wouldn't know the high degree of culpability of the Democrat National Committee, the Obama administration, and the Clinton campaign in this dirty trick of all dirty tricks. We wouldn't know if Devin Nunes had not insisted and signed the subpoena forcing Fusion GPS to surrender its bank records. We're back on the Cutting Edge, El Rushball at 800-282-2882. I got an email today from somebody else. I got an email saying, Rush, what's Mueller investigating? Of course, the answer, that's whatever he wants. There is no boundary. Mueller can go wherever he wants. This whole Mueller investigation is occurring outside the guidelines that the Justice Department has set up for the special counsel. And any special counsel investigation, there must be a crime that is designated by the Attorney General, in this case, Deputy AG, in handling the special counsel. There's got to be a crime that he is instructed to go find out about, investigate. No crime here. No crime has been specified. You could look at the document that charters the Mueller special counsel investigation team. You won't find a crime. There are no limits on the number of people he can hire. There's no limit on the amount of money he can spend. And there's no limit on the amount of time. So he can do and go wherever he wants. And for Manafort, he went back from 2006 to 2015. And that's what he's going to do with Trump. Because there isn't any evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. There just isn't any. The only thing there is the Trump dossier, and that's fake and made up. I don't care what you hear, none of it's been corroborated. A lot of it has been officially blown to smithereens as not credible. And not just the golden showers aspect of it. So to the extent that that dossier has been used to form an official investigation, if that dossier is ever the reason for any indictments, then I can see, well, I don't know. Depends on the judge, depends on the court. This is because everything's been so corrupted, because it's been so politicized. I'll just tell you this. In a just world, and I'm not trying to make a pun here, in a world where the justice system reigns supreme, any indictment resulting from whatever's in the Trump dossier would have to be thrown out. It's not real. It's a political document. It was bought and paid for by a political campaign to do damage against a political presidential opponent. It's not an intelligence document. It's bought and paid for. So anything in it that leads to an indictment, to me, would be extremely risky. So, now I will have to defer to actual legal experts on that last claim, but it just seems common sense to me that if crimes if indictments occur because of things that are not true in that dossier are used as evidence, then what good is it? It's got to be thrown out. So here's the next question I got. Rush, I'm thinking that there's a possibility that Manafort is not actually aiming at Trump here. Meaning with the indictment of Manafort. That Mueller is not actually aiming at Trump, but may, in fact, be trying to get Podesta. What Mueller and his investigators are looking into is Russian influence in general, not from the Trump campaign, but from Manafort for years before, and the Podesta group. Now, Manafort's political entanglements involve him with the government of Ukraine, which is not Russia. And the things that Manafort's firm, things they were engaged in, the Podesta firm was engaged in very similar behavior. Now, I just need to do a little test here. How many of you actually would accept the premise that Mueller is using the Manafort indictment to tighten the screws on Podesta? Anybody think that's got any shred of possibility? Because everybody assumes Mueller, Mr. Big, Washington establishment, unassailable reputation, not covered, not tainted by the corruption of politics. Strictly, same things that we've heard about Comey, which now we have reason to question. But there's nothing here with Trump and collusion with Russia. There simply isn't anything there. Now, Manafort did do some stuff, maybe money laundering, maybe colluding or something with Ukraine, but so did Podesta. Is it feasible that this guy with 16 Obama and Hillary lawyers on his team would be going after a Democrat? Remember, Mueller is supposedly a Republican. Former FBI director. Remember, untainted. One of the maybe two people in town, untainted reputationally by the swamp. Back in a sec, don't go away. I just previewed an ad that is being run against Ed Gillespie, a Republican candidate for governor in Virginia. I don't know. Well, it's outrageous. It's. I'm going to link it at rushlimbaugh.com after I try to describe this to you, which we will do when we get back here, folks. Hanging to be tough. Much more straight ahead. Hi, how are you? Welcome back. Great to have you. Rush Limbaugh, executing assigned host duties flawlessly, which happens every day. And that's because I do the assigning. We are here, behind the golden EIB microphone, at the distinguished Limbaugh Institute for Advanced Conservative and Anti-Leftist Anti-Media Studies. Telephone number 800-282-2882. Email address lrushbaugh@eibnet.us. Okay, I just got an email right before the end of the previous hour that contains it's a Twitter link to a video that is an ad that is being run against Ed Gillespie, who is the Republican candidate for governor in Virginia. It's disgusting, but at the same time, I don't know. It's just ridiculous. Now, I'm going to describe this to you, but I just sent the link up to Coco at rushlimbaugh.com, and he will post that link so that you'll have a chance to watch it. And I'm sure it's available in a bunch of places, but I just have seen it now. I want to try to describe this to you. It is called, well, it's put up by some outfit called Latino Victory. Latino Victory at Latino Victory US or Latino Victory Us. And the premise of the ad is that Ed Gillespie and Donald Trump promise the American dream, but only deliver an American nightmare. No more. Vote Ralph Northam. He's a Democrat running for governor. Now, I just had a chance to watch this once, so I'm going to give you the overview description. You have a bunch of Latino kids in a neighborhood playing basketball, doing neighborhood things that kids would do either before or after school. And all of a sudden, a gigantic, black, menacing pickup truck with a Confederate flag hanging outside the bed, near the tail bed of the truck, is prowling the neighborhood. And when Latino kids see it, they get scared to death and they start running. They leave their pickup basketball games. They leave the lemonade stand. Whatever they're doing, they run for their lives. And this big, black, menacing pickup truck with the Confederate flag prominently hanging from the rear continues to chase them down. And it chases, and it chases, and no matter where they go in the neighborhood, the black pickup truck is there. And finally, we get a close-up of the back of the truck, and it says, Gillespie for governor on a bumper sticker right underneath the Confederate flag. And the kids are scared to death that they're being run down, and that they're going to be picked up, and they're going to be put in the back of the pickup truck, and they're going to be deported. And then at the end, one of the kids wakes up and discovers it was a nightmare. He's in bed. He wakes up as that same old vehicle device that they use in television shows. The dream sequence, as it were. Did you find it, Snerdley? Have you looked at the link? Is my description fairly accurate of this thing? Pretty much right on the money. Now, I have to tell you, folks, we've been through a lifetime, you and I. We've been through 29, 25 years of this kind of stuff, and most of our experience is of it working. Is it not? Over the years, we have cringed at this stuff, but we've had to resign ourselves to the fact that it works. One of the reasons why is the Republicans never push back on it. The extent to which Republicans push back on this stuff is to join the Democrat call for amnesty, for example, to prove that we're not the way we're being depicted in these ads like this. Only Donald Trump, not just push back, Donald Trump aggressively stops this stuff before it starts, or if it is aimed at him, he will push back on it. But Gillespie didn't push back on something that was similarly like this, outrageous last week. Gillespie, no, let's not go there. It doesn't even deserve a comment. It was equally reprehensible. I just don't remember what it was. Well, what they're trying to do with this is link Gillespie to the Charlottesville fatality. Remember? Where the skinheads and the neo-Nazis and the white supremacists, all 10 of them, ended up running a car into an innocent leftist protester who died. So they're trying to put Gillespie in Charlottesville. Oh, it's not just Latino kids. One of the kids has a hijab. A Muslim kid is in this mix too. They're all kids of color. They're all kids of color, and they're all minorities. Latinos and Muslims. And the Gillespie for governor pickup truck is running them down and intent on picking them up and capturing them and doing who knows what with them. And then one of the kids awakens, and it's just a nightmare. Now, our experience is of this stuff working. But, as I look out over the landscape, folks, and this is not wishful thinking. This is not anything other than an objective assessment of what is happening now. And if you ask me, I think this stuff is starting to backfire and implode. Look at Hollywood. Hollywood is been exposed for what it is. What is being exposed? Let me, in a nutshell overview, what's being exposed is that wherever you find the quote-unquote establishment, and predominantly the liberal Democrat establishment, Washington, D.C., Hollywood, TV shows, wherever you find it, you find that they have been openly mocking the middle class and middle America for all of these years. They've been making fun of people. They have been abusing and impugning their values. They've been making anti-Christian movies, anti-straight movies, television shows. They have been ramming gay sex down your throat. They have been ramming pornography down your throat. They have been ramming feminist-themed shows. All of this left-wing stuff, they have just been in your face with it, forcing you to watch it or turn off the TV. You will watch and you will like and you will love. And look at what's happening. Hollywood, the only movies that are worth anything anymore at the box office are horror movies. They tried to pass George Clooney off as the modern-day equivalent of who? Cary Grant, middle-class, universal appeal. And he's not. He's an ardent, ultra-left-wing. Look at what Jimmy Kimmel said. Jimmy Kimmel is in New York, I guess, doing a week of shows in New York. He was interviewed by somebody. He said, maybe the days of fun in late night are over. Hey, Jimmy, that's not good. You think people are tuning into your show to watch serious monologues? That's what's going to stay. Have you guys taken a look at your numbers lately? I remember when this program began and the perplexed media would ask me, what is it about this show that people like? I said, it's not that, although they do. I said, this show combines a couple of elements that are not combined anywhere else in media. What do you mean by that? I said, well, if you turn into the Tonight Show, and instead of a 10-minute joke monologue, Johnny Carson would get very serious with you about whatever he thinks of whatever issues of the day. You get kind of uncomfortable, right? Yeah. I mean, that's not why you're tuned in, right? You tune in to Carson for the joke monologue. Consequently, if you turn on Nightline, and instead of Ted Koppel and his serious discussion with his panel, he did a 10-minute joke routine, stand-up, you go, wait a minute, what's this? Right? Yeah, that's right. I wouldn't expect Ted Koppel to start doing Johnny Carson. That's right. Well, I do. I combine irreverent humor and serious discussion of issues in one presentation with credibility on both sides. It's hard to do, and they can't do it. And it's especially from the standpoint from which they're coming. Their standpoint is to mock people, to make fun of. You know, I love left-wing humor. Left-wing humor it claimed to be it's perfectly tolerable and fine because we never make fun of people with power. But Republican comedians, all the Republicans do, they make fun of powerless people. They make fun of racists. They make fun of blacks. They make fun of Hispanics. They totally claim that conservative humor is aimed at the powerless, whereas liberal humor is aimed at the powerful. Well, that's out the window now. Hollywood is making movies which attack middle-class values and then preach to them, the people, about how wrong and misguided and backwards and hayseedish they are. And it's been building and building and building. And so this ad, the Democrats have not been winning elections. I know you get mad at me when I point this out. And I know the conventional wisdom is the Democrats are going to take the House back in 2018 and Donald Trump is going to get snookered and lose in a big landslide in 2020. But there isn't any evidence to suggest that. In fact, the evidence is that Donald Trump's base is getting stronger, that Donald Trump's base is becoming more glued to him than ever with every one of these attacks. With every attack on Trump voters, with every attack on Trump, with every transparent attempt to ruin Trump, it just cements the bond that his voters have with him. And some of these drive-bys are getting it. There was a story last week, I didn't get to it, but a former executive at NPR, was it NPR or PBS? I mean, it's six of one, half dozen of the other. This guy, for some reason, decided it wasn't healthy that the only point of view on NPR PBS was the point of view that dominates in Washington and New York. So this guy actually went out into the heartland of America, where he expected to see a bunch of racists and a bunch of bigots and a bunch of homophobes and a bunch of uneducated, unsophisticated boobs. And he found just the exact opposite. And he was legitimately shocked. Now, he didn't say it was going to change his opinion, but he used it to say that maybe we in the media are missing some of what's happening in America, and who thinks it? There have been a few more of those. They're isolated examples. But my feeling is that none of this stuff, I should say none of it, I don't want to be blanket one way or the other, but I don't think this stuff is working for Democrats the way it used to. You know, we would automatically conclude that, like an ad like this, that people would believe it. That people would think, wow, this Gillespie guy, yep, he's a Republican, so he hates Muslims. Yep, he's a Republican, so he hates Hispanics. Yep, he's a Republican, he only cares about the rich. But that stuff, the evidence that it's not working as it always has, the Trump dossier is evidence that it's not working. Who else, I ask you, who else could have survived the Access Hollywood video? There isn't anybody, but Trump did. And it's safe to say that it didn't really harm him much, if any at all. Why is that? Well, the bond, for one thing, and what it means. But I think there's also another element, and that is that a certain percentage of American voters, the voter population, is becoming more and more aware of who the left is and how they operate, and are simply unaffected by it. And in fact, not only are they unaffected by it, they actively oppose it and get mad at it. Now, I realize I'm still in a minority here. Most people on our side think the Democrats and the media get away with whatever they want to get away with because they have so much power, it's impossible to refute them. And they'll cite this Manafort and say, Rush, I don't care what you say. The country's going to end up thinking that Manafort spun the election for Trump, and this is the first stage, because that's the way the media is reporting it. That this is just the first stage in indicting Trump, and it's got to happen this way, but that's what's happened. Even though it isn't, there's nothing related to Trump whatsoever in this indictment of Manafort. In fact, folks, you remember that question I asked you right before the hour ended? I got an email. Rush, could it be that what the Manafort indictment actually is a first step toward getting Podesta? And I imagine many of you laughed at that. Come on, Rush, don't tell me you're falling for this now. I'm not falling for anything. I'm just asking you a question. But here, I have a story from the Daily Caller, Chatsworth Osborne Jr.'s website. FBI's focus on Manafort doesn't have anything to do with Russian collusion in the election. The FBI's investigation into Donald Trump's former campaign manager, Paul Manafort's, focused on several suspicious wire transfers he made 4 years before the presidential election, according to a Sunday report from BuzzFeed. Manafort's suspicious financial transactions were flagged as far back as 2012 and forwarded to the FBI's International Corruption Unit and the Department of Justice, according to a Treasury official. Now, you have to note here that Manafort's company, as well as Podesta's firm, they were both lobbying for Ukraine to join the European Union, which is something Putin adamantly opposes. Putin doesn't want Ukraine in the European Union or even close to it, nor NATO, any of these kind of things. Now, if Trump and Putin were colluding, then certainly a Trump guy wouldn't be working to make this happen. But Podesta's firm and Manafort are linked only in terms of their objectives and business purposes. It's hard to comprehend that a special counsel with 16 lawyers that work for Clinton and Obama would be targeting a Democrat. Because we all know they all in the swamp want to get Trump. But anyway, RushLimbaugh.com. I haven't. Coco says he's going to post a link up there, so it should be there if you want to go see this ad that they're running against Gillespie in Virginia. Back after this, folks. Well, look at it here. Tony Podesta has quit his firm, ladies and gentlemen. He's the brother of the skeletal and emaciated John Podesta, who was the butt boy for Obama and Hillary, chief of staff and all that kind of stuff. Tony Podesta, founder of the Podesta Group, stepping down from the firm that bears his name after coming under investigation by Mueller. He steps down after Manafort is indicted. And it said that Manafort is indicted because Mueller wants him to flip on somebody. What if it's Podesta and not Trump? As I posited 35 minutes ago, can you imagine at CNN if this actually is the case? What's going to happen? A quick question, and I want to get back to the phone. Well, get back. We haven't gone yet. We'll start on the phones here in just a second. Quick question. What would you think of the observation that Paul Manafort has been indicted, i.e. being punished, for taking millions of dollars from Vladimir Putin without giving him uranium in exchange? The Clintons took millions of dollars. They got millions of dollars. Bill got a $500,000 speech fee. The Clinton campaign, are you aware of how many millions of dollars the Clinton Foundation got in this uranium deal? It's tens of millions of dollars. They got money. They gave up uranium. They haven't been indicted. But Manafort has been. Let me ask, when the Clintons gave up, the uranium was the property of the United States, right? What did the United States get for selling that uranium? Are the Clintons and the only people in America who benefited from that deal? The Clintons benefited from the sale of 20% of the U.S. uranium supply to a Russian-related firm. The Clintons were personally enriched twice via the Clinton Foundation and the Bill Clinton $500,000 speech fee, and the Canadian guy acting as the broker here. But it wasn't their uranium. What did the USA get for it? Well, I mean, the answer is nothing, but why? Why did the Clintons get to sell it? Or why do they get to be involved in the transaction that sells it? To the phones. We're going to start in Williamsburg, Virginia. Brian, glad you called. You're first today. It's great to have you with us.
Good afternoon, Mr. Limbaugh. As you've taught me, intelligence guided by experience, the Republicans we know are not going to do anything with sitting down a special prosecutor. They've done everything in their power to work against Mr. Trump. We have evidence now that they've funded Fusion GPS to work on this dossier. I don't see any other way, and also that all of these hearings are an absolute waste of time. You notice Mueller didn't have any hearings, but yet he's got an indictment. So I wanted to ask you: is it possible that President Trump can request or order a special prosecutor to be put in place, and that gentleman's name needs to be Joseph DeGeneva, and have him start an investigation into this Fusion GPS and this Uranium One deal? Does he have the power to do that?
Well, this is tricky. The president runs the Department of Justice, theoretically. Well, not constitutionally he does, but there is this invisible barrier that is supposed to prevent political involvement and corruption. Of course, the barrier doesn't exist when the Democrats are in the White House and run the DOJ. whether the president can request an independent counsel to look into Fusion GPS, no, I don't think so. That has to be the Attorney General. Yeah, how did this special counsel come to be? Anybody wondering about that? Sessions had recused himself, and Trump forever believes that if he hadn't, there wouldn't be a special counsel. But Sessions recuses himself, which means the deputy, by the name of Rod Rosenstein, was now in charge of the DOJ for anything related to the so-called Russia collusion investigation. And there's nothing there. Folks, there is nothing there. It is impossible to be more emphatic. There's nothing to this. They haven't produced a bit of evidence in over a year. Well, the reason why there's a special counsel is because the Democrats were raising hell. The Democrats were raising hell about it once Sessions recused himself. That's all they needed to go out and start bellyaching about the fact that there was collusion. I mean, look at the Attorney General's had to recuse himself. We need some independent investigation. And the deputy AG said, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. And so he called Mueller, said, you and Comey want to look into I'm sorry. You can have Comey, but you can't sell him, but they're best buddies. You want to look into this? And so that's how Mueller came to be. I don't think Trump calling for another independent counsel look into Fusion GPS is either the answer, nor do I think that that would in any way be how it would happen. This Fusion GPS thing is right where it needs to be. It's right. Devin Nunes, with the subpoenas, has uncovered their bank records, and these congressional investigations are heading down the track. We'll see where they lead. But it's got the rats scurrying for cover. Janet in San Antonio, Texas. You're next. How are you?
Hi, Rush. I'm so glad to be on your show.
Thank you.
My husband and I love your show. I'm wondering, with the fact that Mumford was arrested and Mueller seems so out of control, it seems like the IRS, the CIA, and the FBI, they're going rogue. I mean, is this something that you think we could be headed for a coup, or if Hillary had been elected, a coup could have been possible?
This is the coup.
Yeah, I guess.
If Hillary had been elected, none of this would be happening, other they try to still put Trump in jail as a message to the next outsider, don't dare try this. But this is the coup. Loosely speaking, most people think of coups as little tin horn dictators in the jungles of Central and South America getting hold of the army and a couple of jeeps and firing mortars on the presidential palace, like Castro did against Batista and taking over. That's a military coup or junta. But this is a coup. The establishment is and has been trying to overturn the results of an election, or they've been trying to disqualify it. They're basically trying to nullify it because the outcome is something they don't want. And so the quest here, the never-ending pressure on Trump that continues to ratchet up, this is the coup. And Trump is, fighting back against it, but it's a silent coup. It's been going on for months and months and months. Robert in San Diego, great to have you with us, sir. How are you?
Hey, Rush. Couple comments I'd like to make. This is regarding what you were mentioned earlier about the Podesta group. Before we make any assumptions that now we're going to be looking into the Podestas, I'd ask a couple questions. And the first one would be, what did Mueller do when he suspected something with Manafort? He raided his home, took his hard drives, took his computers, took all the information. As far as I know...
Even took some clothes.
Yeah, yes, that's right. And then we know.
Took Manafort's favorite Friday night suit, from what I understand.
I think you're right. And then you can ask the question, if he's really serious, and you know these people that we're dealing with, did he raid Podesta's house? Wasserman Schultz, Hillary, Robbie Mook, Susan Rice? This is why Jeff Sessions needs to take over this investigation immediately. Because the one thing that you know is going on right now, there's no doubt about it. As you would say, don't doubt me. They're destroying evidence every day that they get before the evidence is collected.
Well,
a simple subpoena doesn't work.
Let me. You think that they are not pursuing Podesta, that they're not pursuing Blabbermouth Schultz, that because they didn't perform pre-dawn raids on their properties like they did Manafort?
Well, I don't know if I can make that assumption, but what I can say is, if you were really pursuing him, you would go guarantee that you locked down that evidence before they could destroy it. So at least he's given them the opportunity. Like, give them a couple weeks. You guys better, get your stuff together, destroy what records,
Oh, I see what you're saying, that Mueller is protecting them.
He's not going after him like he did Manafort. I mean, Wasserman Schultz's hard drive is going to be in the Intercoastal Waterway. I mean, it's ridiculous to assume anything is being done properly, and that's why that evidence needs to be collected. I mean, we know the Clintons destroy devices, erase emails. They have a history of that. I mean, are we going to let them get a 3 or 4 week head start on this again? I mean, it's bothersome.
Well, I can see why you would think this if you're seeing Manafort being the victim of a pre-dawn SWAT team raid, and other people who might be investigated for similar things not being. I don't pretend to know what's going on here. I don't pretend to know investigative techniques. The question was asked of me, do you think the indictment of Manafort could actually be in pursuit of Podesta? Could they be trying to get Manafort to spin on Podesta? They're both doing the same things. Their businesses were involved in the same kinds of activities. And the news today is that Tony Podesta has quit his firm in the face of the Mueller investigation. But the timing of this, he also quits his firm after Manafort has been indicted. Remember also that we only know a lot of this because of leaks. The Mueller team leaked to CNN on Friday. Trey Gowdy says that's illegal. The grand jury stuff here. You cannot leak. The prosecutors cannot leak grand jury proceedings, and that's essentially what's happened here with the leak that there were indictments coming, sealed indictments over the weekend. The Manafort team is made up of Clinton and Obama lawyers, and there is one of the members, but his last name is Weissman, and apparently he has a signature technique as an investigator. It's the pre-dawn SWAT team raid of one of your targets. But as to what that action against Manafort could mean for other players, I'm not even going to hazard a guess. I'm glad you called. We have to take a time out because of the constraints of time. We'll be back after this. Don't go away. Back we are on the cutting edge. Your guiding light, Rush Limbaugh. The saga continues. Okay, here's a soundbite about George Papadopoulos, who has pled guilty to lying to the FBI. He pled guilty on October 5th, but it was just announced today. On CNN this afternoon, Wolf Blitzer spoke with Jay Sekulow, who is part of the Trump legal team, about this. Said, let's talk about George Papadopoulos. Wolf was so flustered he first called him George Stephanopoulos. He said, let's talk about George Papadopoulos, now pled guilty. He was arrested over the summer. How worried are you, Mr. Sekulow, that his involvement in the campaign, working with national security advisors to then candidate Trump, and also establishing these contacts with Russians who had dirt on Hillary, that could set the stage for what the special counsel is looking into, possible collusion?
I'm not concerned about it because if you look at what, again, George Papadopoulos' plea is. What the actual plea that he entered into was, again, a false statement about a timing as to when he talked to somebody about Russian activities. It wasn't, by the way, these weren't activities that were illegal. The conversation that they had, there's nothing in there that says that conversation was illegal or inappropriate or whatever it might have been. You look at what he said to the agent, and again, obviously I don't represent Mr. Papadopoulos, but it's statements that he made to the agents he's
Jay,
now pled guilty to.
So, if you go back and look at Wolf's question, it's very instructive to look at this stuff. Because, Wolf, and you have to understand, all of these people, I think, are way, way beyond even their own ability to be objective. And that's not even the right term. Let me put it this way. I think, after over a year of this, I think 99% of these media people believe with every fiber of their bodies that Trump cheated and colluded with Russia. When they hear news that Hillary and the DNC paid for the Trump dossier, it doesn't move them. Their reaction is, well, it doesn't matter who paid for it. Is it true? They believe it is. I think they're so far gone that they are not capable of believing exculpatory facts and evidence. I don't think it's possible. They're so invested in it. It started off as a desire of retribution, to get even, to screw Trump, to defend Hillary. But it's been going on for so long. It's been the only thing that they have reported on. It has been the primary focus of the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, MSNBC, NBC, you name it. That I think it has become its own fact. It has its own life. The fact that Trump colluded. And they're simply incapable now, intellectually and emotionally, of ever believing it didn't happen. So this guy pleads guilty to lying to the agents. It's a process crime. It's a Martha Stewart crime. And Wolf's question, how worried are you that his involvement in the campaign, working with national security advisors to then candidate Trump, and also establishing these contacts with Russians who had dirt on Hillary, that could set the stage for what Mueller is looking into, possible collusion? What dirt on Hillary? Nobody had any dirt on Hillary. Hillary had committed dirt. Hillary was using an illegal server. Hillary had hidden and deleted half of those emails. Hillary bought and paid for the Trump dossier. Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton are they're walking dirt. You don't find dirt on them, meaning you don't make it up. You don't dig it. It's there. But Wolf can't possibly see that. She will forever be a victim no matter what. Okay, we're going to get into some other things in the next hour. NFL ratings dwarfed last night by the World Series. Houston Texans and the Reverend Jesse Jackson want the owner, Bob McNair, drummed out of the league, as was Donald Sterling of the Los Angeles Clippers. And there's to me, a fascinating story. Not fascinating. An Apple engineer got fired for letting his daughter use his iPhone 10. Wait till you hear this one. That's right. I told you earlier that Pencil Neck said, is a ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee. He said it doesn't matter who paid for the Trump dossier. What matters is whether it's true. So does that mean that Citizens United doesn't matter anymore? Well, no, these guys are, they're having cows out there over Citizens United, which meant that corporations and all that could donate to political campaigns. Now it doesn't matter who paid for it? Mr. Schiff, do you realize what a giant step in it you just did? Well, I think it doesn't matter really who paid for it. Doesn't matter who paid for it. That's the sole reason you oppose Citizens United. Doesn't matter. It only doesn't matter who paid for it because the Clintons and the Democrats did. His focus is on how much of it's true. How much of it's been shown to be true? Pencil neck? Zilch? Zero? Nada. Anyway, Manafort and Gates are going to plead. They have pleaded not guilty to the charges in their indictment, which is not unusual. Gotta make government prove it. Greetings and welcome back. Rush Limbaugh here, 800-282-2882. Interesting polling data from the American Spectator. And it's actually from the Morning Consult and Politico. They did the poll. Have you heard the old adage before the Republican effort to repeal Obamacare began? You better be careful. Better be careful. Whatever you guys do, you're going to own it. Remember that? Not according to the polling data. According to Morning Consult and Politico, 68% of voters say that Democrats own Obamacare. 68% do not blame Trump for higher premiums. Exactly as I thought. And by the way, exactly as Trump said. Trump said the Democrats own this. He said the political thing to do would be to let it implode. Because the Democrats will take the heat, the Democrats will get blamed for it. And turns out that he was prescient and right about this. Let me tell you this little Apple story. This is about the iPhone 10. There's a young woman out there by the name of Brooke Amelia Peterson. And she loved making, and she's in her 20s, I think, maybe close to 30. I can't tell. It's difficult to know. But she's certainly 21, 22, and under 30. She lives in Southern California. Her dad works for Apple in Cupertino. He works at Apple headquarters. Turns out he's a RF engineer on the iPhone 10. Radio frequency does work on the wireless aspects of the iPhone 10. He's an engineer. And she makes YouTube videos. And prior to the YouTube video in question, she had 300 followers. I mean, nobody knew who she was. But folks, she is as, and what I'm saying next here is important to understand the outrage that followed here. She is, in the eyes of multiculturalists, satanic. She is white. She is blonde. She is bubbly. She's enjoying her life. She made a video of how when she's depressed, she goes shopping. And the video showed her at the highest end department stores, looking at the most expensive clothes and the most expensive accessories. And she is loving every minute of it. She's just in her... Do not misunderstand anything here in my tone. I'm not being critical at all. I'm describing, I'm painting the picture for you. She came up to Cupertino to see her family. They had a family outing, and she and her mother went shopping. And she records it all on video, and it's cleverly edited. It's got some upbeat music to it. She narrates and has herself on camera describing things. And she's just bubbly and effervescent and appears as happy as anybody could be. And when I watch this, when I watch the whole thing, which I haven't fully yet described, I started getting a gnawing feeling in my gut that this woman was going to get destroyed when people saw her YouTube video. I thought they were going to rip this woman to shreds simply because in our multicultural dominated political left, she epitomizes what they hate. She just She's happy. She's enjoying life. She's unafraid to show that she has the ability to go shopping at the highest end stores and buy the most expensive stuff with no guilt, as though everybody does it, as though this is what everybody does when they get depressed. They go shopping. I had a sinking feeling watching this that this woman was going to get beat up, that she was going to get savaged. And she did. Here's the rest of it. After she and her mother and whoever finished with their shopping spree at some highfalutin mall, probably, where would it have been? Santa Clara, San Jose, somewhere in there. They went to see Dad, the Apple engineer at Cupertino. And they had lunch with Dad in the Apple cafeteria, which is called Cafe Max, M-A-C-S. And it's a fabulous company perk. Cafe Max is a wonderfully large restaurant. Entire Apple workforce eats there, and the executives and everybody else troops through there. And Dad joined them for lunch, and Dad showed her his iPhone 10. She grabbed the iPhone 10 and started demoing it on her video. She demoed how you now get to the home page without a home button. She demonstrated some of the gestures that you now use. She loved it. She said, "Look at this screen. Is this not huge?" She was having the greatest time. A 4-minute video, and about 45 or 50 seconds of it is the iPhone 10 and at Cafe Max. And her dad is shown using it to pay for lunch with Apple Pay. And there are a couple of apparently trade secrets that were on this phone that if you knew what to look for, you could see in the video. So she posts the video. It went viral because of her iPhone 10 demo. So now instead of 300 some odd viewers, she's got 300,000 and counting. And all kinds of hate. Exactly as I feared. They were hating on this young woman. It was just vicious. And it was all because, well, not all, but a lot of it was because how dare she be so insensitive to brag about having the money to go shopping when people are sitting around homeless shelters and basically stuffing dirt in their mouth. Does this woman have no shame? Is she so insensitive? Does she not know how most people live? She should not have portrayed her life as fulfilled and fun and enjoyable. I knew it was going to happen. I knew it. I just knew it. But because of her little 45 or 50 seconds demo of the iPhone 10, it went viral, and her father got fired. Apple fired her father because there were all kinds of Apple policies violated. Number one, nobody videos anything in Cafe Max. Number two, he had an employee-sanctioned version of the iPhone 10. This video took place a couple of weeks or maybe a month ago. It was after Apple's keynote where they had themselves demoed the phone. It was after all kinds of other iPhone 10 videos are out there. But this one was made possible by an Apple engineer giving it to his daughter to use during lunch. She demoed the thing. It is said that some specific QR codes were available to see on this phone if you knew what to look for. Basically, if you were Samsung or an Apple competitor, that there's some things on this, they're code names for upcoming products on a page in the Notes app, for example. I didn't see any of that when I watched it. Anyway, Apple said, she then did another video in tears, describing how a wonderful family day filled with so much fun and fulfillment and enjoyment, had led to her father, who was a good man, being fired. She said Apple had no choice. Policies were violated. You don't do video in Cafe Max, and employees are not supposed to make public demos of the product when they're testing it and using it. And the consensus is that Apple really had no choice. They couldn't make an exception here because these were major, major, major rules that were violated. And in her subsequent blog, Brooke Amelia Peterson says, look, we don't blame Apple. My dad's fine with it. He's a good man. But she said, at Apple, it doesn't matter how good a person you are. It just matters if you break the rules. But she says, I'm going to continue to buy Apple products. My dad will be okay. He's fine. But she was just choking back tears throughout the entire secondary video. And she kept talking about all the hate that she had received. And she was clearly totally shocked by all the hate. She had never encountered it. She only had 300 viewers for her vlogs, her little videos that she put up. She ran into this hate, had never seen any sign of it, never seen any evidence of it, and it just destroyed her. So most of the tech blogs think Apple had no choice. There's a couple of them that think it was heartless and cold for Apple to fire the guy, and they ought to hire him back. There were major rules violated here. Whether you agree with them or not, they were violated, even though Apple was, had its other videos of the iPhone X out there. But the point of this to me is when I I knew what she was going to get. Breaks my heart, by the way. Don't misunderstand. Here's a young girl who's just happy. She's going to have a family day with her mom. They're going to go shopping, and she's going to go to the mall, and she's going to show some things she's thinking about buying. She got destroyed for it. She got destroyed for being white, for being blonde, for being rich. That made her insensitive. That made her uncaring, all of these things. And then she got her share of hate from people for exposing Apple secrets and all kinds of stuff. It was a rude awakening. But the main reason for me telling you the story is what it was that engendered the hate. I mean, folks, if you're sensitive to our culture as today, as determined by people who create media narratives, then you knew this young woman had stepped in it totally unaware, totally unknowing. In her mind, all she was doing was sharing her happy day with people. And that is what got her all the hate. She was having a happy day. You add to it that she's white and blonde. I don't know whether her dad's going to be hired back or not. Don't know. But it was just 20 years ago. Well, I don't know, 25, 10, I don't know how many years ago. A video like this or a home movie like this, somebody would have thought it was great. Everybody would have been happy for her, having a good time with her mom, family getting together. Today, sharing something like that makes you a target and a focus of genuine, dangerous rage and anger. It's where we are. Eric Schmidt is the CEO emeritus of Alphabet Inc., which is Google. And I think he's, what is the actual title? I don't think he's the active day-to-day. No, he's not. Larry Page is. He's not the active day-to-day CEO. But there's a story here at fastcompany.com about Eric Schmidt being concerned about all the stuff on Facebook and Twitter. And Eric Schmidt is asking the question. Now, remember, this guy is considered to be one of the most brilliant computer scientists in the history of computer scientists. This guy's reputation is right up there, maybe beyond Gates, in terms of brain power. He's a nerd extraordinaire, but he is a multi-billionaire. And ever since the 2016 presidential election, Google has been under intense scrutiny to acknowledge its role in trafficking Russia-backed disinformation that potentially helped shape the outcome of the election. Google's getting blamed for passing along fake news that helped Trump. In some of the most unequivocal comments yet, the company's executive chairman, Eric Schmidt, recently acknowledged that the search giant didn't do enough to safeguard its services against Russian manipulation. We didn't understand the extent to which governments, essentially what the Russians did, would use hacking to control the information space. It was not something we anticipated strong. I worry the Russians in 2020 will have a lot more powerful tools. So this guy is now signing on with this rigmarole that the Russians did all the hacking and benefited Trump. And somehow the Russians fooled Twitter and fooled Facebook. And then he paused. This is what got me. And then he asked, I wonder how many of these accounts are not real people. And my chin hit the floor. We've known they're not real people for 5 years. Have you ever heard of bots? And this guy's just now asking whether or not there might be some fakers on social media. How many times have I told you about this stupid Stop Rush movement that sprang up that made themselves look like hundreds of thousands of people? Was 10 people. We identified who they are. We know where they live. We confronted them one by one. They're ex-college professors, mostly women, and they're just enraged all day. And they sit around and they fabricate these complaint letters to whoever they want to send them to, and they've got an algorithm on Twitter that multiplies them by a factor of thousands, and they make it look like thousands of people are sending emails when it's just 1 or 2 to 10. But Eric Schmidt's just figuring this out. That just blew my mind. Okay, head back to the phones. This is Daniel, Gibsonville, North Carolina. Welcome, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Rush. This is a long-time listener, first-time caller.
Yeah.
And I'm just so glad I got to talk with you. Mega dittos. And I'm originally from Pittsburgh, and I can remember when you were on KQV back there in Pittsburgh.
Wow.
On the corner of Walk and Don't Walk. Weren't you there?
That was the old Chamber of Commerce building at 7th and Liberty.
Yes.
And that was 1972 and 1970. You remember walking by there at KQV back that many years ago?
I do.
Wow.
I do. I'm 73. I'll be 74. And we used to walk around town a lot. I'm from the north side right across the river where I was born. So it was an easy walk for me across the bridge there. But I remember listening to you way back then. And I'm so glad you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan because that's my question today. I'm just a little bit worried about Roethlisberger. If he's, he doesn't look as sharp as he used to, and that's only natural. He's a little older right now. But they're 6-2. They're doing great. And I'm just wondering what you think about the rest of his career and what they might do in the upcoming draft. You think they might?
Well, I saw that they won last night. I didn't watch. I still haven't been able to. I just didn't turn it on. I saw that they won, 20-15. I didn't know they was missing targets last night. I haven't read the game account. I just saw the score. Roethlisberger is 35. I don't want to hazard a guess here. You're too serious about this. Daniel, let me look into this, and I'll give you an informed opinion at some point. Just keep listening. Yeah. I'm not. Are you surprised? The judge in the Manafort case, whether it stands right now, is an Obama appointee. Is anybody surprised by any of this? Shouldn't be. There's a news story out that that whole meeting, it was a speculative story. Remember the meeting Donald Trump Jr. with the Russian honeypot Veselnitskaya? Was that whole thing maybe a setup just to entrap? Of course it was. All of this is a setup. Every bit of it. That's the point that I was trying to make last when we learned that Hillary and the DNC used that law firm Perkins Coie to hire Fusion GPS to go out there and create the Trump dossier. All of this is made up. All of this. is entrapment. Every damn bit of it. It's right out of the Democrat Party playbook. The point about the dossier again, the reason they went for this appearance of official intelligence, foreign country, Christopher Steele, MI6, is because every conventional trick to destroy Trump had failed, including the Access Hollywood video. Everything they had become accustomed to succeeding in getting rid of Republicans, every one of them failed. So they had to try something brand new. And they went for something that looked like it was way outside the political system. This was legal. This was intelligence. This was MI6, and it was supposedly insulated from political corruption, when in fact it was the epitome of it. Hey, what? The reason I'm getting up they're asking me, I pop out of the chair every spot break and run over. I've got my 2 iPads. Well, I've got 2 iPads, and neither of them have logged location since October 16th, and that's not right. Something's wrong. I'm not one who's afraid of location services or data on my phone. I know people that turn it off because they think everybody in the world's tracking them. I don't care. I got nothing to hide. I'm the most boring dry ball. I mean, compared to people making news today, I am dull. Happily so. But I'm fascinated by it. So I don't know why my 2 iPads have stopped logging locations. It's called significant locations, and a lot of machine learning occurs on the phones with that data, and my iPads haven't logged since October 16th, and I can't figure out why. I've wiped them, I've reinstalled software, clean installed, and restored. Nothing's working. I can't figure it out. iPhones are fine, but the iPads, no. That's what I'm doing. Anyway, grab soundbite 27. Sarah Huckabee Sanders with the Sharks. In the White House press briefing this afternoon, Jonathan Karl of ABC News said, "You say that the George Papadopoulos indictment wasn't about the campaign, but it is specifically about the campaign."
It has nothing to do with the activities of the campaign. It has to do with his failure to tell the truth. That doesn't have anything to do with the campaign or the campaign's activities.
But it is the clearest evidence yet of ties between the Trump campaign and Russian officials. So.
Again, there are no activities or official capacity in which the Trump campaign was engaged in any of these activities. Most of them took place well before the campaign ever even existed.
You notice how she just punches right back at him. She doesn't take an iota. She just punches right back. But how about the unidentified female reporter? But it is the clearest evidence that of ties between the Trump campaign and the Russian. No, it isn't. Because there isn't any. You see what I mean? These reporters, everybody has it. They have reported it for so long. They've wanted it to be true for so long. They think it happened, folks. They're not. Just like they are not open to the idea that conservatives are not bigots and not racist, they are not open to the idea that Trump didn't cheat with the Russians. They can't accept that. And there isn't any evidence. But yet the question, but it's the clearest evidence yet of ties between the Trump campaign and Russia. No, there were no ties. And this isn't evidence of it. The guy lied to the FBI about timing of something. Anyway, that's why they're never going to drop this, folks. I don't care. This could be, Planned Parenthood could come out and exonerate Trump. Ruth Bader Ginsburg could come out and exonerate Trump. Take your pick. Harvey Weinstein could come out and exonerate Trump. And they're not going to accept it. No way. I don't think intellectually, emotionally capable of believing that Trump did not do what they are convinced he did. Okay, so I was just watching CNN, and I'm watching Jeffrey Toobin and Carl Bernstein, and they're talking about Papadopoulos and the process crime for which he pled guilty, lying to FBI agents. Jeffrey Toobin just said that Papadopoulos and those emails, it's just more of the continuing mountain of evidence that shows us there has been collusion between Trump and people connected to Russia. And I watched this, and I was not shocked. Jeffrey Toobin has either gone off his medication or has lost his mind, or he has decided he's got to follow the CNN script that Trump colluded in order to keep his job of legal analyst on the air, because there isn't any such evidence. Folks, they haven't produced any. If they had produced evidence, do you realize where we'd be right now? The impeachment proceedings would be underway. Trump would have hired lawyers. They don't have anything. There isn't anything. And I'm watching Jeffrey Toobin literally say that these developments and the Manafort indictment and the Papadopoulos guilty plea, they show that there's continuing. He said, we've got emails even today. He said, I don't know what he's talking about. We've got emails even today that show that there was collusion between the Trump campaign and people connected to Russia. Now, people connected to Russia, that could be Trump picked up the phone and called Manafort. Manafort had no contact with Russia. It was Ukraine, but still. I mean, that's how flimsy it is. Now, I want to share with you. My buddy Andy McCarthy has weighed in on this. Spent some time, and I just got a copy of the column he wrote and posted it, National Review. And I just want to read you the last paragraph. Because in his headline, he said that this whole thing, this indictment of Manafort, is a boon for Trump. It's a helpful thing. And here's what Andy wrote. From President Trump's perspective, the indictment is a boon from which he can claim that the special counsel has no actionable collusion case. It appears to reaffirm former FBI Director Comey's multiple assurances that Trump is not a suspect. And to the extent it looks like an attempt to play prosecutorial hardball with Manafort, the president can continue to portray himself as a victim of a witch hunt. Now, I want you to contrast that with Toobin, the legal analyst, CNN. By the way, his mother's Marlene Sanders, the old NBC. She was a reporter. When I was a kid, she was one of NBC's leading reporters. You know, he made his bones during the O.J. trial and became CNN's legal analyst, wrote some books. But he just said that all of this that we've, and by the way, Carl Bernstein over the weekend was saying, oh, yeah, we're looking at 40, 50-year jail terms. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Manafort's bail was set at $10 million, by the way. Relatively cheap, given Manafort's status. But anyway, here's Toobin. We got emails. We got Papadopoulos. We got more evidence right out there today that people of Trump campaign colluding with people in contact with the Russians. Andy McCarthy. From President Trump's perspective, the indictment's a boon from which he can claim the special counsel has no actionable collusion case. And this appears to reaffirm Comey's multiple assurances that Trump's not a suspect. Remember that? Comey had told everybody but us that Trump was never a suspect in any of this. And so here comes the first indictment, and it has nothing to do with the Trump campaign at all. And these idiots on CNN are running around saying it proves collusion. So I tell you, they're gone. They're intellectually incapable, folks, of accepting, much less reporting, the truth in this case, that there yet is no evidence. There's none, not a speck. So I didn't get to the Reverend Jackson and the NFL players' stories. A lot of stuff there, like Jerry Jones is reportedly trying to sabotage the contract extension of Roger Goodell, the commissioner, and Bob McNair, the owner of the Texans, in deep, deep trouble for saying at the NFL owners' meetings that we got to stop letting inmates run prison. He said he was talking about club executives and not players. Players don't believe it. We'll have that at whatever else happens between now and then. See you tomorrow.